Now, I realize I've overrun, and so we don't really have time for questions. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to go straight over to Jane. And I think the reason why I focus much more on my presentation on small firms, as you could see, small businesses, was because I knew that Jane would provide an alternative approach to today, and then we'll explore some of these points through our questions and answers. Jane.
Thank you very much, Xavier, and thank you, Luigi and Randy, for asking me here today, and a special warm thanks to our Korean hosts, and especially the city of Suwon, for this kind invite. Xavier asked me to share with you TUI Group's approach to sustainability. That's something that's a pillar in TUI's strategy. It's something we've been working on for many years. In fact, TUI had a Director of Sustainability, or of Environment anyway, 26 years ago. So it's something we've been working on for a long time. And we do aspire to leadership in the industry, but in the knowledge that we've still got a very long way to go. And I'm particularly pleased to be here today because GSTC and sustainability certification plays a really critical role in our approach to sustainability. It enables us to credibly highlight our greener and fairer hotels to our customers. So, just a little bit about me and my role. As Director of Sustainability, my responsibility is to drive policy and strategies to steer TUI Group to be more sustainable as an organisation. My job is to work with colleagues at all levels, and the objective is to embed sustainability as part of business as usual. We have a team of sustainability professionals stationed in all the core source markets and the core operational areas of our business. And this delightful picture was taken of me last week. In Turkey, we had one of our regular sustainability conferences, and we took time out to do a beach clean. And who's TUI Group? I guess most of you have heard of us. We're the world's largest leisure travel company, domiciled in Germany, listed on the London Stock Exchange, operating out of over 30 source markets, carrying over 20 million customers. We run hotels, airlines, destination management companies, retail shops. So we're an absolutely huge group. We've got a huge economic, environmental, social and cultural footprint, and hence a huge responsibility to take meaningful and transparent steps to minimise our negative impacts and to maximise the positive ones. The world's a complex place, and this is the context within which we're operating. Here are some very recent headlines, and you can see they're tackling some really difficult issues. Increasing numbers of refugees, extreme weather events, the tragic situation with wildlife poaching, water shortages, the tragic situation again with slavery, coercion and trafficking is a big issue nowadays. Large companies like ours don't operate in isolation of these issues. Indeed, we're only as healthy as the communities and the environments that we operate within. And expectations on businesses are changing. Companies are frequently held to account for the lack of transparency, for damaging the environment, for dubious working practices. It's increasingly expected of companies to be responsive to some of these very difficult issues. And to manage these complex global challenges, the Sustainable Development Goals, or the global goals, have been developed. And once again, companies are being expected to report on their contribution to the achievement of these global goals. And particularly with relevance to us is goal number 8, regarding full and productive employment and decent work for all. Goal number 12, where we're working quite closely with Dirk and the UNWTO on responsible consumption and production and the 10-year framework that they're driving there. And goal number 14, conserving and sustainably using the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. It's easy to get overwhelmed by the magnitude of these challenges, but focusing on the negatives is neither engaging nor motivating if we want to create change within large organisations. At TUI, we firmly believe that tourism is largely a force for good, and that with a firm focus on sustainability, we can make it become even better. And our 2015 to 2020 strategy, Better Holidays, Better World, seeks to frame the challenge in that positive way. This is the way that we introduce this strategy to our colleagues within the business. It's not an external-facing film, but it's something that quite simply explains the strategy to try and engage people within our business. Oh, we haven't got any sound. Can we get the sound working? I think I better move on. Oh, there we go.
One day at a time. Firstly, by stepping lightly and reducing the environmental impact of our airlines, hotels, cruises, coaches, shops and offices. Secondly, by making a difference and creating positive change for people and destinations. We will deliver millions of greener and fairer holidays to our customers, benefiting communities by employing people fairly, serving fresh local produce in our hotels, and developing excursions with a local flavour. And thirdly, by leading the way with pioneering projects to make tourism more sustainable. We are building skills at our hotel training schools and using innovative environmental technology on our aircraft and cruise ships. We think that when travel and sustainability become inseparable, it improves our customers' holidays, our business, and the wider world. That is what we mean when we say better holidays, better world.
We've set ourselves these 3 headline commitments to achieve by 2020. We currently operate Europe's most carbon efficient airlines, and we want to maintain that position and reduce the carbon intensity of our operations by 10% by 2020. Our second headline is to deliver 10 million greener and fairer holidays per year by 2020, enabling more local people to share in the benefits of tourism. And our metric for evaluating that is the number of customers that we send to hotels which are certified to GSTC recognised certifications. And thirdly, we pledge by 2020 to be investing 10 million euros per year to enhance the positive impacts of tourism. And a large part of that will be channeled through the TUI Care Foundation, which is a group-wide charitable umbrella that we've set up to support our work in destinations. And we've got a huge number of KPIs and action plans and objectives underneath that, detail of which is in our sustainability reports. And there are programs in place to improve and innovate at all the different stages of the TUI customer journey. And I realise that's too small for you to read, but I think the breadth of that infographic illustrates one of the key challenges and changes to the world in which we now operate. Customers nowadays hold us morally responsible for whatever's happening to the environment and the people all along and throughout that supply chain and that value chain, whether we own it, whether we control it or not. We take very much an evidence-based and data-based approach to managing our sustainability strategy so that we can track and monitor improvements, These are some of our Better Holidays, Better World internal metrics after the first year of our strategy. So you can see so far so good. In all cases, focusing on these issues is not only good for the environment and communities, but it's absolutely good for our business and our customers' experience as well. And just see those cost savings in particular through operating the business through an environmental and carbon reduction lens. We've reduced our brochures by over 50% over the last 4 years. We've reduced our carbon emissions from our retail estates by 25% over the last 4 years. We've reduced carbon emissions from our coach fleet by 22% over the last 4 years. So this makes absolute business sense as well as good for the environment. And good sustainability performance also pays off in the eyes of the investors. Last month, we were rated Global Travel and Hospitality Market Sector Leader on the Dow Jones Sustainability World Index, and we head up with 100% performance the Carbon Disclosure Project Leaders Index, both on the FTSE in the UK and on the DAX in Germany. But how to best engage and communicate with customers on these issues? They're not particularly interested in our strategies or our metrics or our cost savings. It's fair to say it's a challenge we haven't yet fully cracked. I'm glad to say we're actually working with Xavier on some of the initiatives, and we've got a big program of market research ongoing right now in our 6 biggest source markets to try to find better ways of communicating on sustainability in a way that's brand enhancing, that's really relevant to our customers' experience. Ultimately, it would be great if the mainstream holiday customer was actively driving demand for more sustainable and authentic holidays, but they're not. But even if they're not demanding it, they expect it of us. They expect the hotels we offer to operate to the highest ethical standards, so environmental management, employee management and working conditions, provision for human rights protection, and community support. And that's why GSTC certification and sustainability certification is a cornerstone of our Better Holidays, Better World strategy. We're held to account by the actions of our suppliers. We are the customer-facing brand, and so we're the easy starting point for NGOs and others when they're looking to criticise issues in the tourism supply chain. Stakeholders don't differentiate between the hotels we own and the hotels we don't, and neither do we. It's now a contractual obligation that hotels that we contract subscribe to a GSTC recognised sustainability certification and work towards certification. Our evidence shows very much that certification with our hotels brings positive change and it makes business sense. We've got data and analysis that proves that GSTC certified hotels achieve operational cost savings compared to non-certified units. That's due to reduced energy, waste, water consumption, and also consistently receive higher customer satisfaction and customer retention results. So we're not only reliant on sustainability certification for business performance, as well as our reputation also absolutely demanding it. How we highlight sustainably certified hotels differs per source market, and it's something we're working on at the moment to see if we can standardise. In some markets it's a TUI label, in some markets we highlight the names of the sustainability certifications. In Europe we work mostly with Travel Life. Here it's great to see EarthCheck and Ecotourism Australia. But whatever our brochure labels, GSTC is the consistent criteria standard underpinning those certifications that we recognise. So for a brand like TUI, we can't afford to work with suppliers who now aren't driving sustainability improvements. And that's not the only sea change that there's been over the last decade. Another sea change is the legislative situation in Europe. Sustainability reporting is now embedded in law for business, There's the Companies Act in the UK, which demands reporting on material environmental issues, employee management issues, and human rights issues. There's the Modern Slavery Act in the UK, which will require us to report on how we are analysing incidents of or risk of slavery, coercion, trafficking in our supply chain, and the measures we're taking to address that. We're working very hard on meeting the requirements in our major European countries at the moment of the European Energy Directive, and embedded into, or it will be embedded into most European EU countries in the next year or so, is the new EU Corporate Responsibility Directive. So legislation is only going in one way. How can we make sustainability messages more exciting and relevant to our customers? I've got some examples of the work we're doing at the moment where we tend to emphasize the quality and the authenticity of our customers' holidays without mentioning the dreaded S word, sustainability. So we talk about our performance as one of the top 5 reasons to choose TUI as a brand. We have posters on greener and fairer holidays in our retail shops. We have communications on our websites about some of our projects and initiatives. We weave sustainability messages and particularly opportunities for companies, for customers to have more authentic and local flavoured excursions into our brochure descriptions. We communicate via our apps. And this one's interesting. This is a piece of work we're doing with Xavier at the moment. You'll all have seen the messages in hotels about the towels. These are some quite entertaining and clever ways of communicating to customers the importance of making sure the aircon's switched off, the bed linen changes, and the room keys. And finally, we are seeking increasingly to find engaging ways to involve customers in the projects that we're supporting at a local level in destinations, either through excursions where they can visit, causes that they can contribute to. So a few final words to conclude. Investors and legislators are increasingly demanding transparency of us. In the world of social media, it's a more local and interconnected place within which we live, and poor practices are easy to expose, and the court of public opinion holds us responsible for this as the travel provider. Sustainability is a byword for efficiency. It's simply good business sense. Customers do care. They may not be demanding it, but every time we refresh our research with our customers, we see that the gap between what they say they care about and what they'll buy and what they actually are buying is reducing, and it's that trend that's the important thing to note. And today's customer really does associate sustainability with a premium product. So whereas they're not overtly demanding it when they book their holiday, they expect no less from a brand like TUI. Thank you very much.
Okay, so, oops, that's loud. Our next presentation is from Jim, Jim Sano from WWF. And I think it's interesting to get a variety of perspectives. I think your presentation will come up in just a second. It's interesting to get a variety of perspectives. So obviously the presentation we just had from Jane is very different from the approach I was speaking about earlier on, but I think we coincide in most of the key points. And it'll be interesting to see what Jim has to offer now. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And a special thanks to Randy and Luigi, the GSTC, and the organizing and host committees for this opportunity to compare notes. It's really a great thing that you are all here because we're all seeking to raise the bar and achieve our respective goals. I was very blessed to have 3 chapters of my career. The first chapter starting off with the U.S. National Park Service in a park called Yosemite National Park, which is one of the most iconic parks in the US, and also a park that receives 4 million visitors a year. One of my tasks was to be a part of the master planning team there, and in the process, learned about the paradox of the Park Service of preserving the resource for future generations and yet providing for a high-quality visitor experience. I then moved on for 23 years to be the CEO of Geographic Expeditions, which is a venture travel company based in San Francisco specializing in emerging destinations. And we frequently found ourselves in this situation where we were really at the beginning stages of beginning to offer travel to destinations such as Mongolia or Bhutan, Vietnam after the Vietnam War, even Iran in 1992. And then lastly, and for the last few years, I've been with the World Wildlife Fund leading their conservation travel program. And in all three of these chapters, I really came to appreciate that how the travel industry as a whole can create opportunities to conserve natural and cultural resources. And at the same time, it could be a threat. The type and level of tourism development in certain areas can really compromise the integrity of both the natural and the cultural assets. So I think you all know from the headlines that our world is a increasingly complicated place, and also we're in this perilous situation environmentally that is not only threatening endangered species such as the snow leopard, but also some of the coral reefs around the world. And we can go down the list of really, especially the natural and cultural assets that are endangered from disappearing. Just in terms of wildlife, we've lost close to 50% of our wildlife species since 1970. And at the end of the day, for those of you who offer things like safaris and trips to the Galapagos and so forth, this is your asset. This is your future asset for your business. So at the World Wildlife Fund, we have this mission of stopping the degradation of our planet's natural environment and build a future where humans can live in harmony with nature. And so as the largest conservation organization in the world with 5 million members worldwide, 18 million social media followers, 100 country offices around the world, and really the reputation, the credibility, and the scale to accelerate conservation in a manner that can really achieve results. We have taken the position of partnering with seemingly uncommon partners, corporations that are multinational corporations. And why do we do this? Again, we're going after scale in a way that is really challenging to do with a small tour operator or even a single country. So a new partnership that we launched this past January is a partnership with Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. It's one of the second largest cruise line in the world with 6 different brands, 43 ships, 500 destinations, 5,500 shore excursions, 65,000 employees, and 5 million guests. I never thought in a million years I'd ever step foot on a ship like this, a 7-story ship. But I did, to try to find out really what the experience is like, what a cruise company like Royal Caribbean is doing to improve their sustainability while yet improving the bottom line, as Jane mentioned. And so we were looking for, I'm leading the group that deals with destination stewardship, working with the Royal Caribbean team. And so we were looking for a model that we could use amidst the 200 certification programs, the 390 or so eco-labels, to really come together And so drawing upon our experience with the Marine Stewardship Council and the Forest Stewardship Council, and also working with our science teams who coincidentally were developing a global marine and coastal tourism strategy. And then another one of our units that I've been involved in, which is a conservation travel initiative that focuses on the nexus between communities, conservation, governments, and the private sector, and creating an environment where there are financial incentives for all the stakeholders to really be incentivized to protect their cultural and natural assets. And this slide is an example of one of the success stories in Namibia, where WWF has been working in for 25 years. And it's through this nexus that this country is really the exception, one of the exceptions on the African continent with respect to poaching and the population of elephants and rhinos and lions and cheetahs and zebras are all on the increase. So we also have been working since the 60s in the Galapagos, which you all know because UNESCO threatened to delist it as a World Heritage Site. And again, it's really this paradox of trying to balance really protecting the resource with accommodating as many visitors as the destination would like. So the goals that we set forth, and this is a technical assistance partnership with Royal Caribbean and WWF, and by no means we could cover everything, but at least in the next 5 years, we're looking at helping them reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 35% from a baseline level that they set in 2005. And these are goals that we hope to reach collectively reach by 2020. Sustainable seafood sourcing. We've agreed to reduce the amount of seafood that is not MSC or ASC certified. In fact, they've made a commitment to source 90% of their wild-caught seafood from MSC or sources, and approximately 75% of their farm-raised seafood, at least in North America, from ASC certified fisheries. Helping them with a commodity sourcing strategy, which is dairy, meat, grains, and so forth, coffee and teas. And then again, the part that I'm working on is destination stewardship strategy and a passenger education / marketing strategy. So at the heart of the global, the program in terms of destination stewardship, we zoomed in on GSTC as really the foundation for building out the strategy. And so really at its heart, what we were able to work with Royal Caribbean to get a formal endorsement of GSTC, and also a commitment to use GSTC tour operators that are certified where possible. And then also commit to doing some destination assessments, not only for their private destinations, but also for their destinations that they're calling others within their 500 ports of call. So these are the goals, and I'd be happy to give you a link to really what's underneath these goals. They're set out by year, running up to 2020, and include, again, the endorsement of GSTC, really the alignment with our existing conservation and science programs, and then the whole educating the supply chain, which is really a kind of a complex endeavor when you think about it, amongst all these 5,500 shore excursions that are offered. And then including, and this is an important thing, including GST certification as one of the criteria, and the request for proposals to become a Royal Caribbean shore excursion provider. And then by the end of 2017, conduct some of these destination assessments. In 2018, leading up to the end of the partnership and maybe beyond that, is really to help them develop a preferential purchasing policy for selecting their shore excursion providers, which is really, it isn't in there right now, but it's not unlike really other companies like Home Depot who have a preferential policy to purchase FSC wood products. We are also working with them to look at a way to offset the carbon footprint of all of the shore excursions, and then again to set targets for their private destinations. And then by 2020, we're hoping to, by the end of 2019 and by 2020, to be able to, in the marketing materials, to use GSTC certified and apply that mark to all the tours that are GST certified and that are offered to their passengers. So, and that's the 2020 goal. So on the client education front, and this gets to the point of scale, we are looking at specific challenges. One of them is wildlife trafficking. As some of you may know, the United States is the second largest retail market for illegal ivory, elephant ivory. China is the number one retail market for illegal elephant ivory. And so, and this is a shot that I took a few weeks ago in Siem Reap, Angkor Wat. Walked into a store and looked at the products that were available for sale to travelers. And it's a pervasive problem. Again, you might have heard in the news that about a month ago, they did a census of elephants in Africa, and there was a drop of 30% throughout the African continent. In Tanzania, many of you may be involved in offering safaris to Tanzania. There's been a 60% drop in the elephant population within the last 5 years. Again, that's your asset. That's a tourism asset. So last April, the White House, along with our State Department, has deemed that wildlife trafficking is a national security issue, convened a group of industry leaders, and that's coming from the jewelry sector, air transport sector, such as companies like FedEx and UPS. And also we were tasked to bring together leaders in the travel industry to this summit and to ultimately make commitments to address wildlife trafficking in their operations and their education of their clients. And so Royal Caribbean put their hand up. They made a commitment. We are working with them to educate their passengers, again, 5 million passengers, on the issue and how they can do their part in protecting elephants and the other endangered species. Not 1 month later, Carnival Cruise Lines raised their hand and they said, we'll make that commitment too. So all of a sudden, we get from 5 million passengers to 15 million passengers who have made this commitment to talk to their travelers about the issue. And so, again, we're a big believer of open source. We are creating content that will be shown at all the cabins, on all the online TV channels, on those royal ships that have TV in the cabins. And then in every single one of the cabins, there will be a World Wildlife Fund magazine talking about this issue, as well as supplemental training materials for the guides. And so that, in a nutshell, is really the initiative GSTC is really at the heart of this initiative in building our destination stewardship program. Again, it's unlike MSc and FSC, the application of GST certified is still in its very, very early stages, but what better test tube to try this out than a company like Royal Caribbean to achieve scale. Thank you.
Great. Now, can I ask Randy and Dirk to also come and join us? And we're going to use the rest of the time between now and past, so we've got about 20 minutes to be able to have some questions and answers as part of the group, and a bit of a discussion really of where do we see this going. Because obviously the key here has been mainstreaming, and you know, Jane, you and I have been sitting around these tables for best part of 15 years now. And in that time we've seen the solutions get better, but also the problems also get bigger, you know, in many ways. And I think what's interesting to see is that it feels like we're finally tipping things, and we're saying actually some of the large players like Royal Caribbean, and we'll come back to you in a second, but we're actually saying, look, we've got the systems in place. A few years ago, we were not prepared to say all of our suppliers will have to be certified or GSTC certified or have minimum standards. But we're there now. Are the suppliers really understanding what this means?
It's a big challenge for lots of suppliers, and it takes quite a while to get from subscription to certification, which is, you know, as Randy was saying, that's the sort of the challenge to make it not so challenging that it's not achievable, but it is hard work. And I think we've been, in a way, a bit slow out of the box to actually communicate to customers what we are doing. I guess we were concerned about greenwash, or guilty of green hush, as you call it. But I think we've now got to the point where we've got a critical mass of suppliers that are certified. We've got the systems in place to follow up on those that aren't. We've got very strong commitments, huge endorsement from our product and purchasing teams to work with the suppliers. We've got tools to help suppliers to get there. So I think we're at a stage where we can be more vocal about it.
Is it fair to say that in the past, different departments in a large organization like yours have not always worked to the same goals? And it's not a criticism to you, but the idea being that sometimes the people in product purchasing are asking for some things as this is what you really must have, and this would be the nice to have. But obviously the priorities, the suppliers come back and say, yeah, when Jane talks about this, all makes a lot of sense. But when somebody comes and negotiates price with us, they're pushing us harder and harder every year. And sustainability just seems to have been now an extra that we now need to do, but there's no real incentive for us to do it, other than, well, you have to do it as well.
Yes, that's probably fair to say. And what we now have at TUI is a sustainable product manager who works very closely on training the purchasers. Our goals are integrated into the purchasing 5-year plan and objectives. So I think there's a sort of an integrated approach there. But I wouldn't want to say that there aren't challenges. There are huge challenges. It takes a long time to persuade some suppliers. It takes a long time for them to get to certification level, yeah, it's taken. But then when you think back 15 years to where we were 15 years ago, this was completely off the wall in the UK anyway. Yeah, we've come a long way.
Yeah, and I remember your CEO saying back in 2005, 2006 at World Travel Market that they could not envisage a time when we could ask suppliers to have to do this, but clearly the direction of travel has been here. So I guess from a point of view of the audience and those of you that are either in charge of destination management companies or hotels, a key takeaway message from this is getting your house in order, making sure that you are meeting the sustainability requirements, either whether you want to work with Royal Caribbean, TUI, or the other companies that were not here today but are also traveling in the same direction, is going to become a prerequisite to trade in the future.
Yeah, absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely.
Jim, can we come over to you? Because you'll need to press that button for the microphone. this is a huge step forward for Royal Caribbean, and I know they've been working on the shore excursion sustainability program for quite some time, but the scale of what you're proposing now is incomparable to what we've seen before.
Yes, it is a big leap forward in terms of really achieving critical mass. But it's not only for Royal Caribbean. One of the interesting things I've learned along the way is that for good or bad, these cruise companies are losing market share on these shore excursions by travelers jumping off the ship, and through TripAdvisor and other resources, they're going off on their own to source their shore excursions. And so, so consumers have this choice of going with a certified shore excursion provider, but also in the process, you know, they're hopefully they'll make informed choices in terms of choosing their own shore excursions if they do not go on the ship-based ones. And so last week, as a matter of fact, in Alaska, at the Adventure Travel World Summit, a good portion of the tour operators provide shore excursions. And so I posed the question to them, okay, 50% of all the cruise passengers that go to, of all the passengers that go to Alaska come by boat. So, and if these many passengers are going off and taking your shore excursions, are you going to make that commitment to be GSTC certified or something, another certification program that really raises the bar and protects the resource?
Fantastic. And I suppose, I mean, part of the challenge has been that it's not only just certifying the excursions that exist, but I suspect both for you with your better excursions and your program with Royal Caribbean, this means some fundamental changes to the way that some of the excursions are designed in terms of the number of people in the excursions, in terms of the activities they'll do, in terms of the reach they'll have on those local communities.
I can add to that because one of the other interesting facets that came up last week in Alaska is that all the organizations in the room, they want to grow. They want to grow their business. They want to pay a decent return to their shareholders and so forth. The destinations want to grow. And so you really, really where it all comes down to is destination management planning, which I'm very pleased to see that there's a lot of content with that respect at this conference because of this very fact. And so, and that's what we saw in Yosemite as well, is that it all comes back to a management plan, a sound environmental impact statement that looks at all the costs and benefits of going down different pathways with respect to a destination. We now have destinations like Siem Reap and Machu Picchu that, compared to 20 years ago, they're getting millions and millions of visitors, and I think have reached, they've gone over the tipping point to the point where the resource is really being compromised, and the quality of the visitor experience has been degraded.
But whether we speak of Siem Reap or Barcelona, there are some destinations that have clearly exceeded their carrying capacity. And it seems to me, you know, I'll come across to Dirk now. For as long as governments believe that the two key performance indicators are number of international tourism passengers and income, gross income, not how it filters through the local economy, we're doomed, right?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, I think I made this point before very clear that these two indicators are not sufficient and very often extremely limited, especially to the dimension of international travel. And that we need to increase this information base, not only make it wider, but only more timely relevant. But I think everybody here in the room has consensus on that. You know the Spanish saying, del dicho al hecho. So implementing and carrying it out is actually the enormous challenge, not having the idea. And there's where you are facing fundamental problems of the tourism sector, and I think that is becoming clear throughout the different presentations, it's a small and medium-sized enterprise-dominated sector. It's a sector which is embedded in our economy like no other. It's mingled into economic activities, so extracting the information is highly complex. Now, and I found that already a challenge, but when we speak about promoting sustainability, or what you highlighted in your presentation to market sustainability, there you are adding an additional complexity, understanding the tourism product. The tourism product is a highly complex product on sale. Mm-hmm. You buy today something in the future. You are buying a mainly immaterial product, and you are buying it not at the place of consumption, by definition. So in information economic terms, we have the most complex product on sale. It's a trust and belief product, we call it. And as we are dealing with this trust and belief product, and at the same time we had a lack of evidence, there you have a good recipe of problems. And how to solve that is our work. Certification plays a very important role. Brands in the past were a very important tool in communicating that. But what has changed over the last 15 years? The IT revolution. And that is actually the enormous pressure we feel when it comes to assessing, are we practicing that the right way? And where we need to see that not only as a challenge, but also as an opportunity to resolve many of the challenges we have, because we are learning about them much earlier. We don't need to wait until it becomes significant statistically. So having answered your question, I think, yes, we have to go far beyond these two indicators and these two measurements, and we have to change our way of thinking in accepting to take signals on board at an early stage. That is the responsibility for us in destinations, for us as governments, but also for service providers.
Now, Jane, what percentage of the carbon footprint of your entire holiday? The beauty of what you've got is that you looked at the entire life cycle. And of course you can do that because you're an integrated company. Okay. What percentage of the carbon footprint of the holiday would be the transport to the destination as opposed to being at the destination itself?
Oh, that depends where you're flying to.
Okay.
And from.
Let's say on a 2-hour
but I'd say,
flight.
I'd say around about 80%.
80%. So Dirk, in your indicators at destination level, I probably didn't see all of it clearly because it was presented quickly, but it seemed to me that most of the indicators at destination include things that happen from the moment you landed, as opposed to the destination taking responsibility for choosing to market to long-haul customers or short-haul customers or customers that will not fly instead. And one of the indicators being the carbon footprint that you're responsible for as a destination because you attracted those people.
There are many factors, and simplicity is not helping us. And we have the displacement factor. We have many concepts which actually make that, again, very complex. When you are consuming here, you're not consuming in the opposite position. What is important, Javier, is that we start measuring. There's currently an enormous wave of improving evidence. Key performance indicators being introduced by companies, by destinations, and at the same time seeing the whole process at the international level becoming evidence-based and timely evidence. The carbon discussion is highly complex, and in the past was basically isolated to the issue of transportation. And there we had then these bipolar, there's carbon footprint, and you shouldn't travel far. That is too simplistic. And actually the next COP, after the COP21 reached the agreement on the target, is now discussing to what extent we can come up with a sectorial commitment. We have country commitments, country reporting, but interesting for us is to see which areas in the tourism sector, because of the technology available, can overachieve these targets and which others we as a sector have to help to maintain the other benefits of tourism in their destinations. So that's a discussion we have to take across transportation modes, and it's a discussion we have to see also related to all the other service providers in tourism. So there we can reach a balanced approach, and there we in the end contribute to the best way to development, sustainable development. But once again, evidence and the right frameworks are of utmost importance in there.
Okay, yeah, I won't dig deeper because I understand it's complex, but it seems to me that for as long as we leave the transport thing as no man's land, as we have done.
No way that it's no man's land. It's no way that but it's important to see the different modes of transportation and the possibilities they have, and especially to model the right way. And there in the past, the information was limited to, as you asked Jane, to a company, to a specific destination. And look, the bringing it to very simplistic terms, only last year I have seen really good models for the 2050 projections for the transportation sector, contrasting that against cargo. We had arrival statistics. We didn't have point-to-point statistics which allowed us to make global models for the transportation flows in a way that we can say now we are discussing what policy implementations actually produce as effects.
Yes, this is true, but for as long, I mean, we can keep tinkering with reusing towels in a hotel for as long as we want. If we choose to attract tourists that come from twice as far away, I don't need very sophisticated statistics to know that one thing doesn't compensate for the other. You know, we need to attract consumers that travel a shorter distance but produce the same economic benefit to a tourist destination, or make sure that tourists stay twice as long using the same flight. So at least the carbon footprint per night, per stay, and per economic impact of the destination is halved.
If you want to say we should not work right now to improve the situation of sustainability while we wait for the evidence, absolutely. I think there is also a huge consensus about that. But we also have to improve the evidence in the sector enormously at a much higher speed than we have done over the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Good. Now I'll come back to the evidence-based in a second, but I wanted to ask Jim a question, because actually, Dirk, the point you made is very valid, in that it will probably be much easier to meet the commitment of MSC and ASC certified fish, for example, because we can transport it to where it's needed, then it will be making sure that in each one of the key 500 destinations, this, the DMC that we're using happens to be GSTC certified, simply because we can't shift DMCs around to where we will need them. You know, it's a big problem certifying services compared to certifying commodities.
You're exactly correct. Certifying shore excursions and ultimately the whole supply chain all the way down to where the service is delivered is infinitely more complex and there are all these different modes of transportation, different types of activities and so forth, it's not just fish. It's just this myriad or constellation of different shore excursions that are offered to the passengers. So again, you know, one of the things that makes this program unique, it's not just a business to consumer play, it's also a business to business play. And in some respects, that makes it more simple.
Okay. Randy, what's your takeaway from all this in terms of implications back to GSTC?
Well, it is a complex world of travel and tourism. I mean, as you were saying in your presentation, the difficulty of getting the right message. We have to get the right message for large hotels, for small hotels, for tour operators, for rental cars, for aviation, so you've just had the discussion about commodity versus service, but then it's all these different types of services. So I think what we have to do as a takeaway in this room is think about how do we creatively take all these concepts for my piece of travel and tourism. As we can see here, there aren't easy solutions, but we have to understand the concepts of the pressures from regulation that will help push us towards certification, but more and more, the consumer and the travel providers who are buying B2B are looking for this. So you have to look for that whole right combination of what's the message I need, how do I deliver it, and it just has to be customized to my little corner of this enormous overall sector.
A really good example of this is the carbon footprint of a 6,000 passenger Royal vessel versus a 100 passenger Lindblad vessel. Yeah. Well, one of the more surprising things, and perhaps not a surprise to you all, is the carbon footprint per passenger of a 6,000 passenger vessel is 50% less than a 100 passenger vessel. So when you're coming up with standards, which one is better on that one dimension?
Yeah, which, Dirk, we'll finish with you now because we're coming close to the final time. But the challenge is this evidence-based decision-making, isn't it? In that we are comparing things that are so complex and so different from one another. How do we go about taking evidence-based when we aggregate it at government level or destination level?
I just wanted to add another example to Jim's example because going into the aviation sector, and you mentioned before aviations and the impact on destinations, when you are comparing a direct flight from Madrid to Bangkok to a flight which is landing twice on the way, usually people in the room would say that the flight landing every 5,000 nautic miles is consuming more fuel, or? How many hands do go up? Which flight is consuming more fuel? A direct flight or a flight which is landing every 5,000 nautic miles? The direct flight is consuming double as much. And we are the tourism sector. These are basics. And just right now, adding to Jim's example with the vessel, there's still so much work we have to do to improve the understanding before we jump to a conclusion and say long haul is not good. But answering your question from another side, evidence-based, we have to work on evidence-based to improve the evidence, but at the same time, we also have to improve the understanding what this evidence means. And both things should go at the same speed and help us to make tourism more sustainable. But we should not finger point at he has to come first or he has to come first. It's a joint commitment we have to have in the tourism sector. And you mentioned before, you have seen TUI speaking at World Travel Market. I have seen TUI speaking at TUI at ITB. And that a long time back then, Jane. We have come a long way. There are some pioneers in the sector, and they are here among us in the room, and they have pioneered where others still were seeking the consensus. And important for us is to strengthen this approach and to help us as a tourism sector to make the case that we want to become sustainable, we are committed to become more sustainable, but also see the opportunity. If we get it done, as I said before, with this complex product, a trust and belief product, we can inspire other areas of life and other commercial activities to also make that step forward and to improve their sustainable consumption and production patterns.
Okay, so just to summarize, because we're supposed to finish now at past, I think for so many years we've been at conferences like this where the speakers say, it's early days, we're getting started. Actually, this is not the case. The message I'm seeing here, and it's a very reassuring message, is, look, we've got structures, things have been happening for quite some time. Maybe during some of those times it looks like it was tentative, but now we have much more sophisticated evidence of where we are. We will, like Dirk is saying, obviously there is still kind of a, elements that we need to figure out exactly, is it like this or is it like that, but the evidence is already there. We're seeing large organizations taking decisions on that evidence. We're seeing the necessity for suppliers like yourselves at destination level to engage with this vocabulary. It is no longer an option to say, this is a fashion, it'll go away. Okay, we can keep consuming business as usual. And it seems to me, for those of you that are looking at engaging as suppliers to the tourism industry, that some of the communications of sustainability as part of the B2B message, as part of the message to engage with the Royal Caribbeans, the TUIs, and the similar sized companies in the world, is now becoming essential. It's now part of the request for products that you will be expected to basically come up with. And that also at government level, there are decisions being taken at government level that are evidence-based on the basis of the impact of your actions for the whole economy, not just specifically for the international number of arrivals and overall expenditure at the destination. I'd like to thank our panel. Clearly, we've got now some time for individually for you to approach some of us during the lunch break and later on during the session today. And one of the advantages of, for example, having an excursion tomorrow afternoon and having some time for socializing is that it gives you the opportunity to talk one-to-one. Thank you very much for your attention, and we will restart at 1:30. I'll hand over to our MC.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Professor Font. And we'll have a lunch time. I know we started this conference in the early morning, so I believe you're a little bit hungry. So we'll provide you the lunch box here. And if you are vegetarian, please put on the table a green paper. We've just presented you in advance to let our staff know. So please put on the green paper if you are vegetarian. We'll provide you a lunch box. So now I'd like to invite yourself back. Thank you very much. We need another big round of applause to our panelists and the Professor Font. Thank you very much.